This is our ESB 2026 player rankings. As today, we will be ranking the top 10 relief pitchers in all of baseball heading into the 2026 campaign. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I'm here joined by two more members of our ESB family. Joel will be joining us middle of the show. Actually, wait a minute. Special guest Joe is joining us right now instead. So we'll get Joe up here to join us for the relief pitchers in our top 10 countdown. We're back at it again, boys. Top 10s, top 20s, regardless, whether you've viewed our live edition of ESB's top 20 starting pitchers back on Monday. We have a bunch of top 10s to rip off still. But today, Tom, we are going with the relief pitcher today as opposed to our starting pitchers that we did a couple days ago.
Yeah, back end of the bullpen, the position that I've always called is the most volatile position in all of sports. We got guys, I'm sure if we were to review our rankings last year, guys who completely fell off, and then other guys who came out of nowhere. And it's some both. Like we'll have a guy on here. At least one that I know was probably on here a couple years ago, then got dropped off, and then boom, he's back. So it's interesting how these move as opposed to some of the other positions where we see, a guy was 2, now he went back to 3, and then maybe he's 5. Like these guys go from like 4, and then they're off the list, and then boom, they're back. So interesting.
We'll see those kind of fluctuations, and as we did on Monday, we're going to continue to do it. We're going to take a look back real quick at what 2025 shaked out for relief pitchers, and it's kind of funny who you see at the top. And now, given the circumstances, things are a little weird for Emmanuel Clase and the Cleveland Guardians last year. But you see a lot of the top relief game. This list kind of did a pretty good job in covering a couple of them, but then you look at guys like Corey, you look at Devin Williams and Ryan Helsley, and they certainly did not have the best of 2025s in their respective New York teams after Helsley getting traded to the Mets there. But it's weird to see the fluctuation, and we're definitely going to see certainly some of that later on today. But Corey, why don't you kick us off with our top 10 relievers of the 2026 season?
Let's go ahead and do it. All right. And at number 10 right there, again, we have two guys in this 8, 9, and 10 that were not in our 2025 rankings, but found a way here. Number 10, Carlos Estevez, who's making his debut to our top 10. Number 9, Devin Williams, who was our number 2 last year, down 7 after the down year with the Yankees. And Cade Smith, again, another newcomer at 8 overall. Looking at these three guys over here, again, Carlos Estevez, interesting reliever. You look at the numbers, they're solid. He had a 2.45 ERA last year, 2.45 ERA the year before that. So I guess that's the model of consistency. The one thing that hasn't been consistent with Estevez is the team he's played with. The guy's been on 5 different teams over the last 4 years, and it seems like he could be a trade candidate, should things go wrong. So we'll end up seeing what happens with Estevez, but welcome to the top 10. Devin Williams really hoping for a better year with the New York Metropolitans than with the New York Yankees. How much of it was due to the New York hiccups? TBD, who knows? But clearly he has the stuff because he was towards the top of our list last year. Has always been a top reliever on these lists in years past as well. So hopefully we're getting the top 5 Williams, not the barely making the top 10 list Devin Williams for the Mets. And Cade Smith, again, he's a newcomer to this list, replacing a former Guardians top 10 reliever. You saw the list before, Clase. We gambled on him for first overall on our list last year, and he gambled on the game. So he's out. Cade Smith is in. And we'll see how these three shake out, our top 10.
Yeah, I guess of these three guys, fellas, I think we could all really pick apart Devin Williams. You see the dramatic drop, -7 in his rankings, and really it just has to do more with that terrible first half he had. And Tom, we saw a lot of Devin Williams last year, a lot of frustration that Devin gave, but then you looked at what the second half was, his stretch run, he became the most reliable relief pitcher for the New York Yankees. Do you think he's going to translate that over to Queens this year?
He was a very reliable pitcher, not as the closer. So I think that's going to be the big question. He was the closer beginning of the year. He failed just miserably. And then when he was able to get back into that comfortable 8th inning position, he was better. Now, he's very talented. We all know Devin Williams is very talented. So could he be a shutdown closer for the Mets? Absolutely. But I think the question still stands: is he really made for not just the ninth inning, but really the limelight of New York? And I'm sure Corey and Joe really hope that he is, but I think it's yet to be seen if he is.
Joe, where are you at with Devin Williams?
Yeah, I mean, listen, the problem with the relievers is they have down years and they have bad years. In his 6 years in Milwaukee, Devin Williams had a 1.83 ERA over the course of his career. That's not something that I can just dismiss off of one bad year with the Yankees. Now, it was a really bad year at some points, and there is a question on whether it's closing in New York that got Devin the spot. It's a question of whether or not that playoff home run to Pete was a cause of maybe a dent in the psyche. We don't know. But at the end of the day, I got to give a guy a benefit of the doubt that has a 1.8 ERA over the course of his career and has only had one bad season so far. So that's why Devin Williams still makes this list. And that's why I think all Met fans are willing to see what he can do for us this year. Because if he is great, we were talking last year, I think he was number 4 on our list last year. Number two on our list last year. So it's not like we're not we haven't seen the best of Devin Williams before. And so the question is, are we going to get the Yankee Devin Williams or are we going to get Milwaukee Devin Williams going forward?
Again, you can get the back end of the Yankees Devin Williams, and it was very much like the Milwaukee Devin Williams of all. But, you talk about consistency. You talk about like the many years that Devin Williams had in Milwaukee and how good he was. And I think that's going to be a theme with the next couple of closers here who've had that model consistency, but also have had those down years as well. Tom, let's get to you with our next 3 players on our top 10 ranking.
Yeah, absolutely. And the guy I was talking about in the lead up here was our number 7 guy, David Bednar. We'll get back to him real quick. There are 6. We have Aroldis Chapman. 5, Josh Hader. You can see none of these guys. Chapman and Bednar weren't ranked last year. Hader has stuck at the 5 position. David Bednar, a guy who was a back-to-back All-Star in 2022 and 2023. 2024, he got sent to the minors. So that's what I'm talking about with these relievers being so volatile. Came back up, was pretty good with the Pirates, and then really found his way with the Yankees in a great way. And he finished the season really good. And I think Yankee fans have a lot of confidence in him as the closer moving forward. He's right behind our former closer, the Yankees' former closer, Aroldis Chapman, again, not ranked last year. Chapman, another guy, he was very consistent, at least for the beginning of his career, then kicked it around for a few years, multiple teams in certain years, kind of getting traded and all that kind of stuff. And it seems like he's found a home again in Boston, where he was probably the best. He was the best closer in baseball last year. If you just look at like who did the job the best, it would be hard pressed to find someone who was probably better overall than Aroldis Chapman. And then number 5, we have Josh Hader. Again, another guy who was so good in Milwaukee and then really good in when he was in San Diego as well. For the most part, 2024, a bit of a down year from him in Houston, and then bounces right back and has another Josh Hader type year in Houston. These are 3 name brand closers who want to stay on this list next year and try to improve themselves because they have, they're also in 3 big spots, right? The Yankees, Red Sox, Astros. These are teams who might be the 3. They could be the 3 best teams in the AL this year. So they're going to have their opportunity to prove it or to potentially fall off a cliff like relievers are known to do.
Corey, could you believe in our 4 years now of doing the top player rankings, this is the first time Aroldis Chapman is cracking a top 10?
It's wild. I mean, it's absolutely wild. And if you're looking at the numbers from just last year, and if we were doing just a pure recap of 2025 rankings, Chapman might be number 1 when you're looking at the numbers. He hasn't put up numbers like this since his early Yankees days, and our podcast started towards the very end. It might have been just past his Yankee days back when we started in 2022. But he really looked like his old self back from the Reds and the very early Yankee days, his brief stint with the Cubs. But his numbers last year were number one worthy numbers. I think the thing with his age, though, you consider, listen, he's 37. You mentioned it, Rich. He hasn't really done it the last few years. He hasn't cracked top 10. And I think that's what kept him out of the top 5. It's like you got to see it again. And at 37 years old, I'm not expecting to see that level of production again, but I still think he's going to be a dangerous reliever for the Red Sox again this season.
Yeah. Joe, any comments on any of these closers here that you got?
Yeah. I mean, the interesting one is David Bednar. We go back to last year. He gets traded from Pittsburgh to the Yankees. Really does a decent job coming over to the Yankees. Kind of stabilizes the back end of the bullpen, which had so many issues leading into that. But he's a curious case, and we're going to see what he's made of this year. 2024 was a really bad year, even worse than what Devin Williams experienced last year in New York. Was even demoted at one point. But he is a good closer. He's been a good closer for several years. Since 2021, he's been a really good reliever. So the question is, can he maintain what makes him a good pitcher, which is high strikeout rate, manageable walk rate? And we saw in that year that he in 2024, where he had trouble, his walk rate ballooned to 4.4 walks per 9. Last year, down to 2.7. Anytime he's had success, it's been below 3. So if he can maintain that control and maintain that, he could be a force in the back of the Yankee bullpen.
Let's get to the next 3 here on our top 10 relief pitcher rankings. And this was tough. I mean, really, when you look at the next 4 relievers, any of these guys could have made the argument for that number 1 spot. But here are the 3 that did come up short in our number 1 spot here. At number 4, we have the Seattle Mariners closer, Andres Munoz. You see the big jump, +4. He was at the number 8 spot. Really been at the back end of our top 10 rankings over the last few years. But this past season had to be the staple season. And he's been great in his career. 2.43 ERA across the 6 years. Last year, an amazing 1.73 in 62 in the third pitch. 83 Ks in that process. That's good for 12 per 9 Ks per appearance. Yohan Duran, speaking of big jumps, +7. He was number 10 last year. And again, another pitcher that usually was around that back end of the top 10s we've seen over the last couple of years, up to number 3, his highest position thus far in these top 10 rankings. Duran, originally the closer of the Minnesota Twins, traded halfway through the season to the Philadelphia Phillies, and really model of consistency across the board. 2.01 ERA with the Twins, a 2.18 with the Phillies. That's good for a 2.06 overall in 2025. And number 2, again, a guy who I think came so close from cracking the number 1 spot altogether. And I think we are getting closer and closer, gentlemen, to this guy being your number 1 relief pitcher / closer in all of baseball. That's Mason Miller. +7 increase year to year. He was number 9 last year. He's number 2 this year. And I tell you what, Mason Miller, look at the half of his season, 2.63 overall. And with the Athletics, 3.76. San Diego, an unbelievable 0.77 ERA as a closer. That's in 23 innings pitch with San Diego, and a strikeout of 9 of 17.4 for Mason Miller. Guys, when we're looking at these 3, Tom, we'll start with you here. Any thoughts on these 3 absolute flamethrowers across baseball?
I think, and we're not going to go back to last year's rankings right now. I think I had both Miller and Duran higher than you guys. So clearly I saw something. We all know the things I see in these guys more than what you guys see in them.
You're the back 3.
Yeah, they were. But I had Mason Miller, I know, really high last year. These are, like you said, Rich, these are all guys that if they were number 1 next year, you would not be shocked.
No. Wasn't going to be shocked this year either.
Yeah. I mean, we'll see what happens. One quick comment I want to make here. My favorite Yohan Duran moment. Went to a Mets game, Mets Phillies, late August. Yohan Duran did not record now, gave up 4 runs. The Mets won the game. That was my favorite Duran moment.
Listen, it's interesting when you look at the 3 of them and you go through their statistics, you'd be like, gee, why is Mason Miller ahead of Yohan Duran and Andres Munoz? But I think part of what we do when we do these lists is the expectation coming into this year. I think now that Mason Miller is actually on a team that wins a decent amount of baseball games in high leverage spots against premier competition that the Athletics maybe don't face on a regular basis, he doesn't have the pressure from the Athletics. We expect that Mason Miller is going to take that next step. When he is right, he is the premier strikeout artist in the sport. 15.2 strikeouts per 9 last season. That is an insane number. The biggest thing is whether or not he can dial in the control and dial in the walks, because he is electric when he gets the ball in the zone, and he can get anybody out. 104 strikeouts each of the last 2 years as a reliever in less than 70 innings.
Absurd. Joe, we're going to stay right with you because it's now time to reveal our number one relief pitcher headed into the 2026 season. Go ahead.
Yes, and as much as it pains me to say it, it is, in fact, Mr. Trumpet, Edwin Diaz. I can't. The uniform is crazy.
I know.
The former closer of the New York Mets, now the closer of the Los Angeles Dodgers. Last year, 6-3, 1.63 ERA, 28 saves, was deployed in many different opportunities, 98 strikeouts and 66 in the third inning. He has a 13.3 strikeout per 9 and 2.8 walks per 9. He is, to me, the premier closer of the sport. He's the guy that you want with your life on the line, on the mound. 2024 was not his best season. He was coming off an injury, coming off the Achilles. If you look and go by his month by month, it was really the first 2 months that really derailed his season, coming off that injury. But if you look back to 2022, 1.31 ERA with 17.1 strikeouts per 9. Even last year in a down year, he had a 14.1 strikeouts per 9. He strikes out 50. Someone's upwards of 50% of the batters he faces on a given time. So really the premier closer of the sport, and I think his place on this list is exactly where it should be.
Or your thoughts on your former closer? Then we're going to look at the overall rankings across the board.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really upset to see him go. Of all the guys the Mets lost this offseason, a lot of turnover, but the Diaz one hurts most. And if you're looking at the Dodgers, I feel like their one possible weakness last year was the back end of the pen, and now they got the best reliever in baseball. So Dodgers will be an absolute menace this year.
Our top 10, as you see it right there: Estevez, Williams, Smith, Bednar, Chapman, Hader, Munoz, Duran, Miller, Diaz from 10 to 1. But let's take a look, as we mentioned on Monday. Now we're going to look at the individual rankings across the board. And funny enough, our guy Keith decided he didn't want to submit a relief pitcher. I don't know if he was just like butthurt about Diaz or just didn't care about the position so much. So he did not incorporate his votes into the mix. But you see it here. I mean, again, not much fluctuation between Diaz and Miller. Tom had Miller in the number one spot. Again, he was really singing his praises before. But Joe, you look at these rankings, anything stick out to you as like a surprise?
I mean, Diaz at 3 is a little wild, in my opinion. Tom is the only one with Fairbanks in there. I got a lot of problems with Tom's list above everybody. Bednar as high as 5. I mean,
Hader's low at 8.
The two that call outs that did make this list were Suarez, who was a free agent this past year, and Iglesias in Atlanta. Both you and Sierra had them on the list in the exact same spots, which I found interesting. And those guys certainly.
Joe, listen, I wanted the premier New York City closer ranked up on my list here.
My God.
That's, I mean, a lot of faith for a guy who was in the minor leagues at one point last year.
He wanted to say that for a long time. And look, Corey with 2 San Diego Padres in the mix really tells you that their story right there, how good of a bullpen that the Padres are rolling in with Miller and Moreno. And that's not even it. Jeremiah Estrada out there is solid. Yuki Matsui is also solid. So San Diego's got a really good bullpen that they're building.
Their pen's their strength.
Absolutely, without a doubt. Tom, any final thoughts before we wrap this up?
No. I really don't.
Love it. I love it. We'll keep it nice and tight here for this edition of the player rankings. But we're going to call it a show here. So again, make sure you are staying tuned for the remainder of our player rankings. We still got a lot more positions to go. So we will see you for the next go around. Take care.